with no hidden fees. An Empire fence can provide privacy and improve the appearance of your home. Keep kids and pets in or out of your yard. Increase security and add value to your property. Visit empire-fence.com now to view the stylish and maintenance-free possibilities for your home and get a free instant online quote. Let Empire Fence protect your empire.
Mosaic is a nonprofit, whole-person healthcare organization that embraces God's call and relentlessly pursues opportunities that empower people with diverse needs to live their best lives. Mosaic in Southeast Nebraska, serving Lincoln and Beatrice, would like to invite you to their monthly Discover the Possibilities tour events. Events are held on the third Wednesday of every month and are a great way to understand Mosaic's mission. To RSVP, please contact Melindy at 402-429-0088 or visit mosaicinfo.org/Southeast Nebraska.
Plains Cover Crop is your one-stop seed shop. Call us now for spring and summer forages, CRP mixes, and fall cover crop blends. We do farm-specific consulting for practical and efficient seed blends to fit your geography and goals. With a very diverse inventory, we will tailor a blend just for you. We're also looking for contract growers, and we buy and sell rye. Find us online at plainscovercrop.com. Timeless agronomy practices paired with modern technology. East Highway 20 in Orchard and across Nebraska.
Your child was embarrassed when you arrived at their basketball game. 75% of parents or guardians report current alcohol use. Drinking alcohol can cause harm to children and loved ones. By drinking less, your child will be excited to see you at their basketball game. If you or a loved one is looking for help, find a treatment facility near you at findtreatment.gov. For immediate support, call, text, or chat 988.
Brought to you by Nebraska DHHS in partnership with SAMHSA.
This is the Happy Hour.
You guys going to happy hour?
Coming at you live from the heart of Lincoln, America.
Yeah, I'll come for a couple.
Here are your hosts, Nick Sainert.
I want to know what it's like to commit a crime without having to spend time in jail.
And Enrique Alvarez Clary.
C is for chunk.
Brought to you by Empire Fence and Netting on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome in. This is the Happy Hour 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. Nick Sainert, Austin Orman with you today as Rico is out for this afternoon.
Busy man, Rico.
Busy man. Yeah, got some stuff to do. 402-464-5685. The Honda of Lincoln hotline and the Starter Heyman text line are open for you guys the entire show today, as well as the Starter Heyman Jewelers live video stream, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Allo channel 961. So once again, Nick Sainert, Austin Orman with you. You can follow us on Twitter, Nick_Sainert or at Austin Orman. We got a good one lined up for you guys today. Definitely going to talk Husker hoops in the start because it is a Tuesday, and on Tuesdays we get updated bracketology. And so we're going to dive into that specifically in the first segment here for about 15 minutes or so. Then at 1:30, we're going to be joined by an NIL business and insights manager from Open Doors, Braley Keller. He's been on the show before, was awesome back in a couple months ago. He's going to come on and talk about what is going on. What does it mean by the NCAA pausing investigations and not opening any new investigations into third-party collectives? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What are the repercussions, both good and bad, of EA Sports College Football 25? Also, Austin has some really good thoughts and questions and ideas about at the NCAA. Are they somewhat taking off the reins of controlling the NIL market, if you will? And then we're going to talk about the SEC and Big Ten partnership that was announced, the alliance, if you will, once again. And it was that the NCAA start to their funeral, right? And if so, how does NIL change if that? And so it's going to be a little bit of a hypothetical conversation there, maybe, but also there's going to be some facts. And frankly, when you look at, and for like some of us, if you read the release that Charlie Baker sent out a couple of weeks ago regarding the Tennessee, Virginia stuff, that also announced, hey, the NCAA is no longer, not for right now, going to put kind of an injunction in there that we're not going to investigate third-party collectives. We might think, oh no, here comes the wild, wild west. Here comes being able to do whatever you want. And some might argue that that's already the case. but I think we're going to learn a lot more of the little minor details that kind of get skipped over because it's wordy words, right? It is confusing at times, and as is the whole NIL world. So yeah, once again, Braley Keller will join us here in about 20 minutes or so. All right, let's talk Husker Hoops. 464-5685, the Honda of Lincoln hotline and the Starter Heyman text line are open for you guys the entire show today. Joe Lenardi, we'll start with this one. ESPN bracketology moves Nebraska into a 8-9 matchup against the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and it would take place in Brooklyn. The number 1 seed, that if Nebraska were to win against Texas Tech, the 1 seed is UConn.
Bring it.
You're a fan of the UConn potential.
I am. Very much so.
I am not a fan of the 9-8 Texas Tech in Brooklyn matchup.
Understandable. Texas Tech has some pedigree. They've been a solid team, or obviously an elite team, a few of the last, 5-6 years, really. Texas Tech is slightly better Rutgers. That's really what they are. We saw Nebraska get up 17 on Rutgers just a couple days ago now, and led by 12 at a couple different junctures with a chance to push it to 14 or 15. Didn't get the kill shot on the road, did at home. Texas Tech would be a tough matchup. It'd be a fascinating matchup. Probably a coin flip. I think you give Texas Tech a slight edge in that matchup, but I don't think it would be, Texas Tech running away with it. I think Nebraska would have a really great chance in that game. Pop Isaacs is pretty solid for them. It's just a bunch of guys. Maybe they're worse Houston and better Rutgers. Maybe that's how I would phrase it. There's nothing really wrong with Texas Tech. Not the best offensive team. Their coach, Grant McCasland, had a great run at North Texas the last handful of years. Big fan of his. But when you say you're scared of that Texas Tech matchup or you're a little leery of it, I think you're going off of reputation.
Well, and that very well could be the case. I think also when you look at maybe Texas Tech, maybe it's the location of the game that bothers me a little bit more, right? Because we lived in this world a couple of weeks ago where if Nebraska's a 10 seed, they could be in Omaha, right? And for geographical reasons, it tells you that would be a pretty good, likelihood, right? That Nebraska might find themselves in Omaha. Also, which would then match up with Kansas is what we expect, right? And the Kansas doesn't scare me as much as maybe it would have in years past. I think that when you look at Nebraska, Brooklyn's far, man. Like that's a long way to travel. And not that Nebraska fans won't, because I think wherever Nebraska plays, there's going to be a big contingent and a big group of Husker fans and supporters at that game. Whether you play in Brooklyn or Seattle or wherever it is, Spokane, that's where I was thinking, Spokane or Omaha, there's going to be a large group of Nebraska fans that are there to support the Huskers making their first tournament appearance in 10 years. Maybe it's just the idea of the Huskers playing in Brooklyn that I don't like. I'm not a fan of it. I also could argue...
Well, especially not compared to Omaha.
Well, not compared to Omaha, but I could also argue that I think Nebraska might be in a better spot as a 10 seed too. Like, I think in that 8-9 matchup, sometimes you could face off against... I understand that in a 10 seed scenario, you're facing off against a 7. But in some of the scenarios where Nebraska was playing a 7, where it was like BYU, or it was Boise State, or Colorado State a couple of months ago, like in those scenarios, I maybe view that as, okay, a 10 seed in Omaha against a 7 seed. I think I would favor Nebraska a little bit more than Nebraska as a 9 playing an 8, hundreds of miles away from home.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially if you throw Omaha into that mix. Let's look back at last year's games just for fun.
Yeah.
The 1-8 in the South was Alabama, Maryland. Maryland had that comeback against West Virginia. Alabama won by 20. Houston, Auburn, after Auburn took down Iowa, Houston by 17. You look at the 2-10 because Penn State beat A&M. Penn State lost to Texas by 5 in the round of 32. In the South part of the bracket, you didn't have the 2 advance because that was Arizona getting taken down by Princeton, who beat 7 seed Missouri. Out east, of course, you have Fairleigh Dickinson take down Purdue. You have Florida Atlantic survive Memphis. and go on to
That was
their
the start
Final
of
Four
FAU
run.
being the preseason top 10
Top
team.
5
Or
even.
top 5.
Yeah, they got that high.
Jeez.
So you had Florida Atlantic make it to the Final Four. Across the bracket in the West, you had Arkansas beat Kansas, after beating Illinois in that 8-9 game. You have Northwestern win a game in the 7-10, then beat against Boise State, lose by 5 to a UCLA team that played a classic against Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. You saw Michigan State beat Marquette in that 7-2 to make it all the way to the Sweet 16, where they eventually lose to Kansas State. But again, to me, it's less about 7-10, 8-9 and matchup. Who's the draw?
Okay. Yeah.
Obviously, location is going to help. Any of these NCAA tournament spots are going to seem not ideal compared to Omaha.
Well, yeah.
But let's not pretend like Nebraska hasn't been out to New York City before. I mean, Rutgers is very close there. We know that. 2018 Big Ten tournament played in MSG at the Garden, which was huge. Nebraska's been out to play St. John's there before. There would be a contingent of Husker fans there. I would assume it's a slightly easier trip from Omaha to New York than like Lubbock to New York against Texas Tech. I saw Nebraska in regular Texas, horns down, matched up in Brooklyn from a different bracketology site, which that one I would love. Texas has definitely underachieved this year given the talent on their roster. But if you tell me we get Max Asmus versus Nebraska, sign me right the heck up.
I think so. Speaking of matchup, right? Nebraska, as of right now, according to every site, pretty much all the ones that I've seen, Big Ten is going to get about 6 teams in. That's the number. It's kind of been that case all season long. The Big Ten hasn't been good enough to fight for like a 7 or maybe even an 8 bid league, like maybe they have been in years past. Big 12 conference is projected to get 8 or 9 in potentially, but probably 9 when you look at it. I think that also goes to say Nebraska, and this speaks to also them getting the job done this Sunday. And the reason I say that is because things get a whole lot hairier and scarier if you don't get it done against Michigan. You drop out of the double bye. And then guess what? A surprise team makes a jump in the Big Ten tournament.
Like Iowa.
Or Michigan State makes their case even stronger, right? Because instead of Nebraska being where if they get the job done this week, they're at worst the 5th team out of the Big Ten conference that's looked at as going into the tournament. But if in this hypothetical scenario, Nebraska doesn't win on Sunday, and then in Iowa wins 2 games in the tournament, or Iowa makes a case known and Nebraska goes one and done, I understand that those are a lot of what ifs and hypothetical situations, but you also can't put it past Nebraska because what we've seen in years past.
Iowa. You can't trust Iowa.
And so then it's that conversation on Selection Sunday of what do you value most, right? And instead of Nebraska being firmly in at this point, because if you ask 100 people, 97 of them are going to say Nebraska is a lock. And that'd be the correct answer today. But if the wrong thing happens and Nebraska doesn't do their job and take care of business starting on Sunday, then it could get a little dicey if a team like an Iowa, in this case, makes a run. Because then on Selection Sunday, you're saying, well, Iowa just literally 2-3 days ago knocked off the top 4 team, one of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten Conference. Does that put them above a Nebraska team that lost to a lower seed in the first round?
And whose best win came in January, and his previous best win came in early February.
And just lost to Michigan, who's now 9-22. They would be.
Yeah.
So it's not that Nebraska's out of the woods. They're in a really good spot here, right?
You can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
They're the definition of controlling their own destiny, right?
That's the best way to phrase it. Yeah.
But if you don't take, and this once again goes back to this, like Nebraska is not firmly out of the first 4 because if the wrong things happen, and Nebraska, let's say, loses on Sunday, and Nebraska goes one and done in the tournament, and a team makes a run, hey, guess what? On Selection Sunday, you're going to be holding on to your chair just a little tighter than you were planning on.
That's where I think Nebraska's in a really interesting spot right now, because for my money, they're in. They've done enough, especially if they're being projected now in the 8-9. It's pretty hard to fall all the way down to the 10, even, the 11 seeds and getting a play-in game in Dayton. But Nebraska doesn't have a whole lot of buzz behind it right now, right? The momentum was there after Wisconsin, But now in Nebraska,
unfortunately, you followed it up with 2 losses.
You did.
Both
and then
times,
you
both
had
after Purdue and after Wisconsin.
Right. You had a 4-game winning streak after that, which was nice, but wasn't against anyone of any, major strength this year. Winning at Ohio State, let's say you get that one on the board, you beat Rutgers, let's say you beat Michigan, and you're ending the regular season on a 7-game win streak. There's some buzz. You're good regardless of what happens in the conference tournament. Losing that Ohio State game didn't necessarily damage Nebraska's chances, but I think it cooled off some of the talk, which on the one hand is great because we know how invested, rabid, emotional Nebraska fans can get about this team.
Yeah.
Deservedly so. It's been fun to watch. But at the same time, as that temperature cooling was probably good for this fan base, maybe a 7-game win streak would have been good nationally for a program that doesn't have a lot of that brand recognition, that might need a little bit of a bump from the national conversation to get a better matchup, to improve its seeding to a spot where you feel better about it. It works both ways. Some of this will only be able to really judge in retrospect. But again, I think you said it best. Nebraska's in a good spot right now because it can focus on the game in front of it. It doesn't have to worry about everything else going on, around the conference or around the country. Because if Nebraska plays basketball to, its 80th percentile, you're going to beat Michigan. You're going to have a good shot in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. Anything better than that, you're feeling pretty good, and you don't have to worry about anything else.
So just for added context, since Iowa was brought up in this conversation, they have 1 game remaining on their schedule. It's at home. It's at Carver against 12th ranked Illinois. So there's a quad 1 opportunity. If you're the Hawkeyes, you're sitting there going, all right, this is our opportunity here to get another quad 1 win under our belt. Maybe they can make the Big Ten a 7-bid league if they do enough, right? But most importantly, having a Nebraska-focused conversation, you have to win Sunday.
Yeah,
you have to, and that's where it starts. And I think if you were, to whatever you want to call it, I think if you had to guess or predict or whatever, if you want to wager, like I think you would say that Nebraska, you have a pretty good feeling that they'll get the job done on Sunday, and I think that's the right call. Texas Tech, by the way, just while we're on this conversation, not to intentionally jump back, currently 20-9 this year in the Big 12 Conference. They're 6th in the Big 12 Conference. So mentioned at the start of this conversation that projected the league, Big 12, projected to get 9 teams into the NCAA tournament. Texas Tech 6th in the Big 10 or Big 12 standings rather. They just had their last 4 games, they had a 1-point win over TCU, who's right there next to them. They had a 14-point loss on the road to UCF, a 12-point loss at home to Texas. That's a big win for Texas. Yeah. And then an 11-point win on the road at West Virginia as well. They have Oklahoma State tonight on the road in Stillwater at 7 p.m. And then they finish off with Baylor at home on Saturday. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by NIL Business and Insights Manager Braley Keller of Open Doors. Talk about the landscape of NIL. Let's do that when we return. Huge thanks to Empire Fence and Netting for their support and sponsorship of the program. As always, Nick Sainert, Austin Norman with you, and we'll be right back. 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com.
Follow Nick and Enrique on Twitter at Nick_Sainert and at Radio Rico AC. More of Happy Hour is next on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
What a day. I could sure use an afternoon pick-me-up. Hold up. The new 93.7 The Ticket location has a milk, coffee, and tea inside? Oh, yeah. This is a game changer.
Need an afternoon pick-me-up? How about a coffee or smoothie on your way to work? Stop by the Ticket Mill location on 1040 O Street to get your go-to drink or try out our new game day drinks, exclusive to the Ticket Mill location. We know it'll make your day a million times better.
My dream was to work in commercial banking, but it required a college degree and I didn't have one. I found out that Doane had classes for adult learners on the Lincoln campus and online. So I earned my bachelor's degree, and 5 months later, I landed my dream job. I decided to continue my education, and now I'm working on my MBA at Doane. For me, the Doane experience has been life-changing.
Your child was embarrassed when you arrived at their basketball game. 75% of parents or guardians report current alcohol use. Drinking alcohol can cause harm to children and loved ones. By drinking less, your child will be excited to see you at their basketball game. If you or a loved one is looking for help, find a treatment facility near you at findtreatment.gov. For immediate support, call, text, or chat 988.
Brought to you by Nebraska DHHS in partnership with SAMHSA.
Introducing The Outlet by Sartor Heyman. The Outlet brings you luxurious Sartor Heyman quality jewelry at unbeatable prices. Shop our expansive inventory of overstocked merchandise and a vast estate collection that just hasn't found its home yet. This is your chance to own stunning designer jewelry at a fraction of the cost. Elevate your style at The Outlet by Sartor Heyman, where luxury and affordability meet. Downtown at 12th and O or online at sartorheyman.com.
Are you working in or looking to get into the electrical construction industry? The electrical workers of local union 265 are now hiring licensed journeymen and apprentices and are offering great pay and benefits. Call Mike at 402-875-1034 to apply. Start your electrical career today.
Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits is now open in Lincoln. Shop our expansive collection of wine, beer, spirits, and cigars at 5040 North 27th Street. From top shelf liquor to crowd favorite beer, Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits has a beverage for every taste and every budget. Plus, join our loyalty program to earn rewards and save on future purchases. Shop Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits at 5040 North 27th Street in Lincoln. That's 5040 North 27th Street.
Spring often marks the beginning of severe weather, which can lead to power outages. LES wants you to be prepared before the storm. Restock your emergency kit, update your info with LES, and if you encounter an outage, report it at les.com/report.
After the snow-packed winter we've had so far, people need some green, which is good because Cash Blast from the Nebraska Lottery is back. Until April 2nd, buy a 2x2 ticket, enter the voucher number, and you could win $5,000 or $500. If your winning voucher is from a 7-day draw ticket, your prize is doubled. There will be 7 weekly drawings and 14 total winners in Cash Blast. So slide into your nearest Nebraska Lottery retailer and play to win some green today. 2x2 top prize odds, 1 in 105,000.
Prashawn Jackson here for Bauer Underground, who has been serving local contractors and utility contractors all across the state since 1997. When you see the black and white trucks, you know the baddest dudes in the business have arrived. Bauer is currently looking for equipment operators, laborers, diesel mechanics, and aerial linemen. Join the brotherhood built on hard work, authentic people, and pedigree of success. Bauer, a family-friendly company who reminds you, go Big Red!
93.7 The Ticket is proud to provide listeners with daily opportunities to win contests and prizes on our airwaves, and would like to take this opportunity to remind you of a couple rules. All participants must be 21 or older and must wait 30 days after winning a prize before participating in another contest. Once you win, you have 30 days to pick up your prize at the K&TK Studios, 1040 O Street in Lincoln, or your prize will be forfeited. Thank you for participating in our contest, and thank you for listening to 93.7 The Ticket.
You're listening to the Happy Hour with Nick Sainert.
Look at him and tell me there's a God.
And Enrique Alvarez Clary.
He made me in his own image.
Sponsored by Empire Fence and Netting on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome back in. All right, welcome back in. There we go. Turned on the wrong microphone. This is the Happy Hour 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. Nick Sainert, Austin Orman with you. All right, let's go to the Sartor Heyman show. We are joined by NIL Business and Insights Manager for Open Doors, Braley Keller. Braley, good to see you again, my man. How's life treating you?
Life's treating me well. Thanks for having me back. I want to call out one thing though, real quick. During that commercial break, you had an ad that played for the electricians union. I think it's almost ironic, right? Talking about the college athletics landscape. News broke just when we were talking earlier, setting up the interview, that the Dartmouth men's basketball team had their first, I believe it's their first meeting to confirm that they wanted to unionize as players. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if this is foreshadowing for future calls if you're going to have some players union type ads coming in or not. Mm-hmm. But that just speaks to the craziness that is the college athletics landscape right now.
Well, Braley, let's dive right into it, my man, because there's a lot going on and a lot for us to get to over the next 15 minutes or so. But basically, let's just start here on a topic that is sweeping across the nation, I think is a good way to explain it. And it might not be on such of a serious topic as some might think. EA Sports College Football 25 is about to be released in just a couple of months. I don't know if you're a video game guy. I'm pumped for it. There's a lot of us here at the station that are pumped for it. One of our former Green Bay Packers running back, Amon Green, is part of our station, and now he's the director of esports at the University of Nebraska. And so it's kind of incredible because he's excited for all of this. We're pumped. The whole world is. And I'm pretty sure that they could put any dollar amount as the retail price and people would swoop it up. They're paying athletes now $600 to opt in if they so wish. And we hear Arch Manning come out just over the last 24 hours and say, I want to focus on football. Could we start to see this becoming a trend? But then also, how is this positive for college athletes?
Yeah, phenomenal question. I like this one because I grew up playing the game. And up until 2014, I'm sure there's so many people that were gaming out on their GameCube or whatever, having fun, enjoying the video game. And there's a lot of other circumstances that led to the pause. And 10 years later, here we are bringing it back. I think to answer your latter question, right, about if this is good for college athletics and college athletes, I think it certainly is. I think this is what a lot of people pointed to back on July 1st, 2021, when college athletes were first able to legally monetize their name, image, likeness. A lot of people pointed to EA and this opportunity to bring back the game. And it feels like we're finally here 2.5 years in. And so I think it's good. I think there's so much excitement around it. There were, and this kind of gets to your second point of the question, but there were out of 11,000 plus Division I players that were sent opportunities to opt into the game, more than 10,000 have already within a week, since launch. So I think there's so much support for it. Arch, I can't speak to his personal decision and what he's working through with maybe his agent or family or anything, but it seems like there's a lot of momentum behind it. So even though he is a big name, absolutely, I don't know if you call it that last 1,000 remaining, if they could band together to push back on it or not. It feels like there's enough steam behind it that you and the guys in the studio are going to be able to play this before you know it.
Yeah.
Can't wait. That's going to be exciting. Braley, when you look at going all the way back to 2021, I know that there's the recent case with Tennessee and Virginia, winning some freedom for student athletes from the NCAA. But even going back to when NIL first started, when you look at the collective aspect of this, are they operating the way that you thought they would in terms of what they're able to do with NIL?
Yeah, I would be. I don't think, or let me say this. I don't think I would go out on a limb and say on July 1st, 2021, I was shouting from the rooftops that NIL collectives were going to be startup businesses that have now turned into full-blown marketing agencies with organizational charts and everything behind it. I don't think there were many that believed it would accelerate and develop it to the level that it is today. But there's continued evolution with it. For 1890 in particular, the collective at Nebraska, I was talking to a coworker today who mentioned that they have a kind of a reserve seating specialty suite at Pinnacle Bank Arena for some of their high level donors, giving them an opportunity to treat those who are sourcing some of the money for their NIL collective. So I think that space has evolved. You're right in acknowledging the Tennessee and Virginia lawsuit against the NCAA, that it seems like the collective space was a huge push behind why the NCAA found themselves in court with that scenario there. But it's funny, these two questions of the EA Sports video game, very much in the commercial segment, and then this collectives topic, that's the yin and yang, the two ends of NIL that most of college athletes are living in today.
Well, let's dive in a little bit more to the collective side of things. We're joined by NIL and Business and Insights Manager at Open Doors, Braley Keller, with us. We saw earlier in March that Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, released that, all right, the NCAA is pausing and not going to be opening any new investigations into collectives. What does this mean? Because I think to some of us that don't study it on the day-to-day basis like yourself, think, okay, collectives can just run wild now. I know a couple of things were still upheld in terms of like NIL and rules and regulations. But what does all this mean that the NCAA is pausing and not going to be opening any new investigations into collectives for the time being?
Yeah, great question. It is the topic of the hour for sure. And for maybe the layman's term explanation of where NIL rules are, even pre Tennessee Virginia lawsuit, it is a 4-pillared approach that the NCAA rolled out with. First is that there cannot be pay for play. Athletes on the Husker swim team can't be paid for how fast they're swimming in the pool or anything like that. The second one, quid pro quo, there must be an exchange of goods. Third one is that schools can't pay athletes directly. And then the fourth one is that there cannot be a use for NIL as a recruiting inducement. So you can't offer a player just to come to the university. Now, that last one is what this case is all about, and what I think is a lot of people have looked at as saying, yeah, but that's the most violated of the 4 pillars. And the NCAA had largely been quiet through the first years of this. They had not announced any investigations against schools. It felt like people attribute this as the Wild West for a long, long time, that there hasn't been enforcement in it. But when the NCAA came out very vocally in January with a case involving Florida State's football program, and then reports, rumors of potential ones at Florida, and then at Tennessee, and their president and their attorney general teamed up with Virginia's attorney general and said, we're not going to take this. We don't believe that the NCAA should be poking around in this collective space. And that's ultimately led to what you're addressing as a preliminary injunction that was granted. So it's more or less a pause of that pillar that NIL can't be used in recruiting. So that's opened up what is believed to be a very unenforceable space for third parties, both collectives and businesses wanting to use NIL in the recruiting process.
A quick follow-up on that second pillar, if I could, the quid pro quo. It seems like from the outside, too, that there's been some pretty good creativity, some nice deals that collectives have put in place for student athletes, but it seems pretty open, too. Have you been impressed with the creativity of these collectives and the deals that they've made with student athletes, or is it just all pretty basic, hey, you're good, we're going to give you money?
Yeah, they have been extremely creative. I love when people from, whether it's collectives or athletes combined, whoever, I love when they get into that creative side of it. I think that makes NIL a little more exciting rather than just here's some money, here's a check, go have fun. I think some of the most odd examples I've seen were athletes being paid to go fishing with the donor. Literally, so it's a meet and greet, technically, if you want it by definition, but athlete, donor, spending time together, you're getting paid to go fish. There's other things too, where you've got athletes going to children's hospitals and making appearances. You've got legitimate marketing promotions where athletes are using their social media platforms where they have 100,000 plus followers, and they're promoting local businesses. And Nick Maestas down the road at Muchachos is his business has been a benefactor of several NIL deals where athletes have promoted his restaurant, and they've gotten more feet through the door and butts in seats there. So that's a couple examples, but I love that creativity that you're referring to.
When you look at those deals too, for the average college student, right? We know the Caitlin Clarks, the Caleb Williams, the rumored figures that they're making. But you also mentioned like the swim and dive team, the bowling team, rifle teams like that. When you look at just like the average college student and their interaction with NIL, are they making a living wage? Is it lunch money? What's like the average college student? What could they like expect, I guess, out of their NIL deal if they go to college?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I want to preface by saying I was a Division III wide receiver in Nebraska Wesleyan University. Go Prairie Wolves! Shout out to P Wolf listeners out there if they're in. But the word average is super hard, right? So I'm gonna frame it as a top 50. I'm gonna roll with wide receiver here. If you're a top 50 receiver in these different categories, and I'll give a frame of reference for what that money is. I'm not going to give or disclose exact dollar amounts, but if you're top 50 receiver in the country and in Division III, expect that to be more that fun money, right? If you're Division II, expect that to be more vacation money, right? Paying for trips, something a little bit more substantial. If you're at the FCS level, lower Division I, that's like a whole summer's worth of work, but put into your NIL earnings. When you get to the group of 5 level, now we're talking about around the salaries of a high school math teacher. And then even further, if you're a top 50 talent as a power 5 wide receiver, we're talking orthodontist, right? So it starts to escalate quickly. There's other variables as far as the market that you're in. There's other variables like your social media following that I was referencing before. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what an average may be, but trying to give you a frame of reference here is as far as what we're working with.
Okay, so Braley, I'm curious because all this started from social media, right? Like that's what the root of all this felt like. And now it's definitely expanded, and give credit to businesses and collectives because they are finding creative ways, whether it's a meet and greet or whether it's whatever the case may be. Is, I guess, the overall question and still the concern that maybe we get from some of our listeners, is there still structure?
Yeah, I believe there is. I think the question comes up a lot of times too, right? Of is this the Wild West? I was talking about this before, and I did some research on the Wild West. This is an interesting snippet for you. But Wild West had a very, very minuscule amount of bank robberies. When you picture what literally the Old West was, very limited compared to numbers that happened within this last year. There was more gun control in cities like Dodge and other famous Old West towns than there are in America today. Is crazy, right? But we have this perception that the Wild West was all sorts of craziness happening. I think while there are crazy examples happening in the NIL space today, I think it largely is regulating itself. I think there are a lot of things that schools have established through their own policies. There's 30 plus state laws out there that still govern this space. So as much as it feels, like things are maybe off the rails or crazy, I think we're starting to only talk about those crazy examples because a large majority of it is happening clockwork and very smoothly in the background.
Let's talk about the state laws real quickly, because that's just a thought that came to my head. Because are those pretty universal throughout all states, or how different can they be from state to state?
They can vary a lot. There's a little bit of a copycat game that went on back years ago, and there's still people that are trying to amend state laws today, but a lot of copy and paste language across the board. So they convey the same message, but to draw us back to that Tennessee and Virginia preliminary injunction piece, the judge and the NCAA, I believe both rightfully acknowledged that this state in which the hearing on this preliminary injunction was taking place in the Eastern District of Tennessee, they were arguing about whether or not collectives or NIL could be used in this recruiting place. Tennessee's own state law prohibits student athletes from signing an NIL deal that's contingent on enrollment. So their own state law is prohibiting this. However, Tennessee's not alone. There are several states without state laws. There's, states like Nebraska who do have a state law, but it doesn't address this topic. So it's very splintered. I won't bore you with all the nuances, but that was a significant part of that preliminary injunction and how things are how the dust is settling across the board. And I think there's more of an importance on these state laws, especially as attorneys general start to seem to have a little bit more interest in college sports now than maybe as NIL first rolled out.
So once again, last one before we go ahead and let you go. We're talking to Braley Keller, NIL and Business Insights Manager over at Open Doors. We heard just a couple of weeks ago, I think it was late February, Greg Sankey comes out and mentions, hey, us at the SEC and the Big Ten Conference that are now looked as the super conferences, right, specifically in college football, that, hey, we're gonna kind of join in an alliance and kind of just for reference and thoughts and just to share them with each other and be on the same page. And it felt a lot like right when it was announced, like it was the start of the NCAA's funeral. And there's been so much conversation about, is the NCAA going to be around in 5-10 years? Where do you sit at in that conversation? And if the NCAA isn't around in the near future, what does that mean for NIL?
Yeah, this is a great one to end on. So I think the NCAA still exists. I had some previous experience working on NCAA committees. I know a whole bunch of people that work in Indy, and they're great people. It's not quite this Charlie Baker, the czar of college sports that lives in Indy and makes all rules. There's actually a system with this kind of thing. And so it is, I think the NCAA functions very well for things like championships. And I don't think they always get, looked at for that. There's the CFP, but then there's a whole nother, and I shouldn't even say whole nother side. You're really seeing the tip of the iceberg on ESPN, but for a Division III guy like myself, there's a lot that happens in other sports and other divisions that I believe the NCAA will continue to govern. And so I don't know if I believe that it's the NCAA's funeral. And I also don't think that they get a lot of credit when it comes to how they have been pushing for modernization. Just back in January, they pushed for, additional resources for student athletes on NIL, like giving them, insight to what their market value could be, education, pushing for more visibility on the agent segment. There's a lot of things that the NCAA was and continues to advocate for the space to modernize it. So there's that side, and maybe to the Big Ten SEC merger, thought group. I'm trying to remember exactly what their tagline is and how everyone on Twitter decided to spin it their own way. But there's always conversations happening behind closed doors. College athletics is a world of relationships. So, Petiti and Sankey, I'm sure they're talking and they're bouncing ideas off one another. Even Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, acknowledged that the SEC and the Big Ten and large players like themselves are a part of this vision for the future of the NCAA. There's models of trust funds. There's models of schools being able to compensate athletes for NIL. Like there's a lot of stuff that I think has some steam behind it going forward. I do believe, for any of my nerds out there listening into the college governance space, there's an interesting couple months ahead as things continue to shake out. So I know that feels like a non-answer as far as where I land on it, but it's, if I had a crystal ball, I'd tell you right now where I think things are heading.
I said last one previously. This is one that just popped into my head. The market, right? Do you ever see it not continuously increasing? The figures never not getting larger, if that makes sense. Is it always going to be, because, and kind of tying everything back full circle, we started out with the EA Sports college football game in this conversation, and they announced it. They said, hey, listen, this year, it might be 600, but next year it might be more. And the following year after that, it might be more. Do you ever see it not being more the following year?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. I think as long as there are marketing budgets and as long as there is this growing increase to support college athletics, attend games, pack Memorial Stadium, all these kinds of things, right? The collegiate athletics world continues to grow. There's record year. This last fall was a record year as far as viewership for college football. And there were a lot of people who believed that NIL was going to be the demise of that people would lose interest because it's not amateur athletes out there playing for the love of the game, but now there's semi-professionals. And there's a lot of questions of whether or not that would impact viewership and general support or buy-in into college sports. And we haven't seen it yet. I think it's risky to say that every single year after year, it's going to keep growing. I think we have seen maturation even over the last couple of years in the market, but I will acknowledge this preliminary injunction and this whole pausing of NIL enforcement in the recruiting space. I think over the next few months, you could bet on seeing a lot of reports thrown out there into social media of recruit X got Y dollars as an offer or whatever. I think you're going to see a lot of that initially. It's going to peak and then it starts to, again, mature and level out as this market starts to mature, because it again, really has just been a couple of years. So I think it's probably too early to tell projection wise, but I do find it fascinating as we start talking numbers here.
Well, what a crazy couple of years it has been, right? It's evolved so much and it's grown so much in just a short amount of time, like you just mentioned. All right, Braley, we'll go ahead and let you go. Appreciate the time as always, man. And we look forward to future conversations.
Yeah, Nick Austin, thank you very much.
There he is, Braley Keller, NIL and Business Insights Manager or Open Doors, joining us on the Starter Heyman Jewelers live video stream. Let's take a break, and we'll wrap up the show coming up next.
Download our app by searching 93.7 The Ticket in your app store to stay in touch and listen all day long wherever you are. More of the happy hour is next on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Spring often marks the beginning of severe weather, which can lead to power outages. LES wants you to be prepared before the storm. Restock your emergency kit, update your info with LES, and if you encounter an outage, report it at les.com/report.
After the snow-packed winter we've had so far, people need some green, which is good because Cash Blast from the Nebraska Lottery is back. Until April 2nd, buy a 2x2 ticket, enter the voucher number, and you could win $5,000 or $500. If your winning voucher is from a 7-day draw ticket, your prize is doubled. There will be 7 weekly drawings and 14 total winners in Cash Blast. So slide into your nearest Nebraska Lottery retailer and play to win some green today. 2x2 top prize odds, 1 in 105,000.
Your child was embarrassed when you arrived at their basketball game. 75% of parents or guardians report current alcohol use. Drinking alcohol can cause harm to children and loved ones. By drinking less, your child will be excited to see you at their basketball game. If you or a loved one is looking for help, find a treatment facility near you at findtreatment.gov. For immediate support, call, text, or chat 988.
Brought to you by Nebraska DHHS in partnership with SAMHSA.
Working at Continental in Lincoln isn't a job, it's a career. And right now, they've raised wages again, and they're hiring for production operators at $24.62 per hour, which grows to $28.97 per hour within 3 years. Skilled trade positions now start at $33.36 per hour, with opportunities to make more based on certifications. Continental also has salary jobs available and great benefits, plus medical and prescription costs at very low premiums. Dental, vision, and life insurance are offered at no premium cost to the associates, with increased bonuses and vacation for new hires. To learn more or apply, go to continentaljobs.com with keyword Lincoln. Come work at Continental today.
93.7 The Ticket, Fox, KFXL weather. Brought to you by Bryant Air Conditioning, Heating, Electrical, and Plumbing.
Your Lincoln forecast for today, we'll see increasing cloud cover throughout the day. Also see calm winds and an afternoon high around 57. Tonight, partly cloudy skies are expected with an overnight low around 32. And tomorrow, partly sunny skies will return a little warmer, see a high around 60. I'm meteorologist Kyle Klecker for 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Mosaic is a nonprofit, whole-person healthcare organization that embraces God's call and relentlessly pursues opportunities that empower people with diverse needs to live their best lives. Mosaic in Southeast Nebraska, serving Lincoln and Beatrice, would like to invite you to their monthly Discover the Possibilities tour events. Events are held on the third Wednesday of every month and are a great way to understand Mosaic's mission. To RSVP, please contact Melindy at 402-429-0088 or visit mosaicinfo.org/Southeast Nebraska. Big box stores are tempting for buying equipment for your high schooler in sports or for yourself in your sports leisures. But buying new is awfully expensive. Why not go somewhere with new and used options? Play It Again Sports is quality, slightly to gently used equipment, and 50% of their inventory is actually new equipment. And it's more than baseball, softball, and golf. They also have equipment for disc golf, fitness, hockey, and more. Plus, they're always buying products. Bring your gear you're done with and get trade money on the spot. Play It Again Sports at 48th and Vine.
Action Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electric is the call I make when I have a need for plumbing services. Whether it's for my home or office, if I need a repair to a water heater, softener, or even my garbage disposal, I know I can count on Action to help. In one simple call, their amazing customer service team promptly schedules a service call, often getting to my needs within a day. Action delivers honest quality services we can count on. To learn more, visit actionlincoln.com.
For over 15 years, Integrated Life Choices has empowered individuals with disabilities in Lincoln and throughout Nebraska. They provide comprehensive services from group homes and independent living services to job training, ensuring fulfilling lives for those that they serve. Now, they're inviting you to join their mission. If you're passionate about making a difference in the lives of people with developmental disabilities, explore rewarding career opportunities with them. Learn more about their services and apply today at www.ilc.net. Be a part of Integrated Life Choices, where your work truly changes lives.
You're listening to the Happy Hour with Nick Sainert.
This is a house of learned doctors.
And Enrique Alvarez Clary.
As soon as your eyes shut, I'm going to punch you square in the face.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back into the Happy Hour 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. Nick Sainert, Austin Norman back with you. Thanks again to Braley Keller, NIL and Business Insights Manager over at Open Doors. Good conversation on just the overview of the NIL landscape now that EA Sports College Football is coming out again, and you have a temporary and preliminary injunction coming out from the Charlie Baker and the NCAA as well. Pausing investigations into collectives. What does that mean? Talking about just the NCAA as a whole and what happens if there is no NCAA. I got the sense from him, Austin, he doesn't see that coming very soon, if at all.
Right. And that makes sense, right? I think the initial conversations, the initial reaction was, this is the death blow. This is where it's at. Where most of us here are loath to give the NCAA much credit at all, if any.
Yeah.
But I think it deserves a fair chance to respond, a fair chance to adapt. The obvious criticism is, well, you had 150 years, you didn't do anything. Right.
Yeah.
But I think that goes both ways. So I'm willing to give the NCAA time to adapt with new rules, with a new landscape, and try to make itself better, because there can't be no governing body. There just can't be. Somebody has to be in charge. A handful of somebodies have to be in charge of everything going on. If there's one president over everything, great. If you have like smaller presidents, like committee chairs, in charge of everything, reporting to a president, fine. Whatever that system is, there has to be a system in place. We can't make this up as we go along because of how much money and how many livelihoods are involved beyond just the student athletes, beyond the coaches and the team personnel.
Yeah.
Think about the athletic departments. Think about the universities that have to rely on athletics to help fund academics. You can't have this be a free-for-all, have people try to chart their own path. There needs to be guidance. There needs to be direction, but it has to make sense to some degree for everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. So yeah, if you missed that conversation, highly recommend going back on the podcast page or on the video stream, because Braley did join over video. So it's a full interview that you can check out over the you can actually see Braley as well. I believe, if I remember correctly, he lives in South Carolina. He mentioned that he played football at Westland, but he lives, I believe, currently in South Carolina and just obviously works for Open Doors remotely. So huge thanks once again to my friend Braley and stopping by and hanging out with us for almost 20 minutes there. It was a really good conversation on just the landscape of NIL. And the thoughts about the Wild Wild West are kind of funny as well.
The irony.
Yeah, the irony behind it, because it's just like, and both times we've had Braley on, it's been like the same kind of reaction for me. It's like, okay, it's not as out of hand as maybe it appears. We hear about so much and such large figures, and he brought out that really good kind of like comparison of like, okay, if you're at this level, this is this quote unquote average, right? And if you're at this level, it's an average. And and he didn't necessarily put a dollar figure on it. He put what kind of career you have, right? And so he compared something to a high school math teacher or an orthodontist. And so it was really interesting, and it helps, frankly, for me, because we don't have enough knowledge on the topic. We can always learn more regarding NIL. And so Braley, who does that on a full-time basis, that was really, really good stuff to hear from him. All right, Austin, what's coming up on the show today?
A lot of good stuff. We'll start with Husker Hoops. The women's basketball team got a number of awards. We'll talk about that. And you posed an interesting question to me. We need to get to, how badly does the NCAA tournament need Keisei Tominaga?
Yep.
That would be fun. We're going to talk about that. The Athletic came out with its top 25 college football coaches. Want to go through that list, get your thoughts on it. NFL franchise tag decisions have to be made by either 4 o'clock Central or 4 o'clock Eastern. We're coming up on the deadline here today. And then just a general college basketball conference tourney kind of preview and overview. Not the major ones, but kind of the under the radar ones that start this week. What are the fun ones I'm watching out for? What should you have on in the background tonight?
All right, there you go. All that and more. I'm joining Austin today for the 2 hours, so make sure you stick around. We got the shootout today.
Shootout with Nick.
Shootout is back today.
You're going to like it.
I did not do well last week on the shootout, but we'll see what happens. Don't forget, if you don't listen to us in the afternoon, too bad. You should. But if not, join us tomorrow 9 a.m. We'll have state basketball, and I'll be at PBA from Thursday to Saturday, or Wednesday to Saturday again on the block. Coming up next.
Hi, everyone. Kendall Warnock, A1 Automotive in downtown Lincoln. The last few years have been